Good evening, everybody. It is such an honor and a privilege to be here again for Mussar Mondays. Tonight, the topic is going to be cleanliness. In Hebrew, that word would be Nekiyut. And we're going to have to define what cleanliness means. Now, most people, when they think about the word cleanliness, they associate that with what do you associate that with? Cleanliness, taking a shower, right? Things like the washing your hands. That's not what we're talking about, right? This is not about hygiene, although hygiene is critically important to be a healthy human being and a civilized person. However, that's not the topic here tonight. The topic is cleanliness of the soul. Right? Nekiyut is a cleanliness of the soul, and the goal is to uproot from our hearts the desire that leads us astray, so that those desires no longer have any power over us. Right? We all have desires, we have urges, which we consider to be needing some cleanliness, right? We need some cleaning. And what we're going to try to do through this process is, number one, identify them, and number two, clear them away so that we don't get unclean from those urges and or desires. So are there any questions? Okay. Now, part of what Nekiyut means and cleanliness means is not only to be clean, but rather to be innocent. There's a certain element of innocence that is missing today in our generation, and in previous generations as well. It manifested itself in different ways. But for sure in this generation, we are in a terrible, terrible status of spiritual poverty, where people, and innocence is gone. Innocence is missing from people. It represents itself by what people watch. It represents by where people go, by how people act, by how people talk, what people look at, etc., etc. Many times people ask me, Rabbi, are you being a little bit too radical by not having a television in your home? I said, holiness is something which is very, very, very important. And innocence is something which is very, very important. And something which is not easily acquired after it's taken away. So I prefer keeping the gift of innocence and keeping a purity rather than, God forbid, falling prey to the other side and then trying to make myself holy again. And that's a very, very big task. So, being clean and being pure, spiritually and physically, is what we're trying to aim for here. Because as we've spoken numerous times, the physical body has a spiritual representation. The spiritual soul has a physical representation. So, if the body is unclean, many times we discussed this also when we spoke about order. The topic of order, remember we spoke about the midah, the trait of order. What is order? Order, we said, if you're not organized in your spirit, right, most likely you're not organized in your mind, in your body. And it's important for us to have both of those very, very organized. I don't want to confuse the two, but one of the great sages, it says that a story is written about him that he went to visit his son in yeshiva. It's back in the days in Europe, and he went to the yeshiva, and they said, "Oh, your son is here in the study hall, in the Beis Medrash, studying." So he said, "I don't need to see him study. I want to see his room. Show me his bedroom." He went to the bedroom, and he saw that his bed was folded nicely, his linen was right. He opened up his closet, he saw that everything was organized. He says, "Now I know exactly where spiritual state is at." When your physical world is organized, your spiritual world has the ability to be organized. Usually they link together very nicely. Cleanliness is the same thing. A person who maintains a cleanliness in their outside hopefully maintains a cleanliness inside. It's very interesting that the halacha says a very, very interesting law. It says that Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar, who has a ravav, which could be like a stain on his clothes, he's warranted death. Death. What does that mean? What? He was eating his French fries and some ketchup dropped in his shirt. Right? He's also a human being, right? But you represent more than just yourself. You represent Torah. You represent the Jewish people. And if you're walking around with stained clothes, it's a blemish on who you represent. Right? It's an important thing. You're clean. You're good. You're good. But just for Susan out there were two. I was picking on David again. Yeah, Susan watching. Yeah. So we have to clean up our bad traits. That's the type of cleanliness we're talking about. Looking at cleanliness, the first thing is identify that there is something that needs to be cleaned. If someone has anger or propensity towards anger, then if someone has anger, is that Susan calling you now?
No.
Oh, okay. So right. So if someone has, what was I saying here? Someone has a propensity towards anger. Thank you. So that's not clean. When we're trying to get to a cleanliness of the soul, we're trying to remove all of these shells that are on top of us. We have all of these layers that don't allow our soul to shine. And that's what the cleanliness we're talking about. We say, Niki chapayim uvar levav. Can you pass me the siddur on the next shelf right there? Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, that one is it. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Camden, that's your job. So here we go. In Psalms we have Psalms 24. Who may ascend the mountain of Hashem, and who may stand in the place of His holiness? Right? Mi ya'aleh behar Hashem u'mi yakum b'mkom kodsho. You know who? Niki chapayim uvar levov asher lo nasol hashav nafshi lo nishba lemirma. Listen to these words. You know who can ascend the mountain of Hashem, and who may stand in the presence of His holiness? You know who? One with clean hands and pure heart, who has not sworn in vain by my soul, and has not sworn deceitfully. Right? Someone who's clean. Clean hands and pure heart. Thank you. Leave it here in case we need it again. But what we see is that there's a virtue of having a cleanliness to us. There are people, they hear that there's some tumult going on in the community. They want to know all the details. Stay clean. Stay clean. I don't need to get into the mix. I don't need to know. I don't need, right? There's a virtue to it. A tremendous virtue to it. So the first is the clean of bad traits, bad midot. And then to be clean of sin. So, we may know something is wrong, but when we're tempted, we are not able to withstand the challenge to overcome our desires because we lack the cleanliness. All right? Let me ask you a question. Okay? Who's more likely to notice dirt on their clothes? Someone who's coming from a work site that has dust and has spackle all over their clothes, or someone who's walking in a tuxedo? Right? The latter. The latter is much more it's more likely that someone who's coming from a workplace is not going to notice it, because you know what? All around them they have dirt. All around them there's dust, and there's things all around them. But when someone is coming with a tuxedo and there's some dirt, they'll notice it immediately. The idea is that for our soul, we may not recognize that anger. We may not recognize that jealousy. We may not recognize that flattery that we have to try to find favor in other people's eyes. Because maybe we're that worker coming from the workplace, we don't realize the sensitivities of the soul. We don't realize the cleanliness. But someone who's clean, someone who's worked on themselves, someone who gets to a state of cleanliness, they'll be able to notice right away, you know what? I exhibited a bad trait. I exhibited an inappropriate jealousy. I was, didn't say something appropriate. So what cleanliness does really essentially is we're talking about this is a fundamental trait which all of Mussar really is going to zero in on, because we need to get to a state where we're in touch with ourselves. The biggest challenge we're facing is that we're living in a world today where we're numb. People are spiritually numb. Right? We're being influenced by the music, which is destroying our souls. Movies that are destroying our souls and our sensitivities and our purity. So where do we get the cleanliness from? So I think the first step, we're going to talk more about this, the first step is to identify what we want to accomplish in our lives. What do I want to accomplish? And then, if I want to accomplish spirituality, I want to accomplish greatness, I want to reach greater heights in my spiritual growth, so then I have to measure the things that are around me, the things that I may be influenced by, are they helping me towards that goal? And if they're not helping me towards that goal, perhaps I shouldn't be, again, we always have to make put it on an equation of, is this what I'm looking to do? Is this going to help me reach my goal? It's like, imagine the diet. We go back to that diet example. So I'm on a mission. I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, so now if I really, really, really want to lose those 20 pounds, I have to think before I put something in my mouth whether or not this adds towards that goal or detracts from that goal. And if my desire and my urge to eat that food is greater than my desire to lose the weight, then who's going to win? So really, we have to know where we want to go and then figure out how we're going to get there. Cleanliness is one of those tools. You have a question?
There was kind of something along those lines that has just kind of bewildered me. I think it was we were having Shabbat dinner, and afterwards, like, my youngest was talking about this Charlie, and I vaguely know what it is, denomination. And it's like, no, don't do that. I forbade her from doing it, and I took the paper and threw it away. But it's basically kind of doing like a Ouija board or something with the paper and stuff. And she's like in, second grade. It's just so casually done or something that she picks up on it from just her environment.
Right. It's a frightening thing, because anybody in the world today who thinks that we're not influenced by our environment is delusional. Yeah. Right. We are influenced by our environment.
Yeah, you can even say, just like today, in a coffee shop, just getting coffee, and just hearing the people that are talking around you, not even eating or drinking, that's a whole other story, but just listening to all the things that people are, even though you're not really,
It's toxic.
facing.
Right, 100%. It's hurting us. It really is hurting us, and we have to be very, very careful about what we allow in. We have to be careful about what we allow in. So if we are spiritually cautious and we're trying to seek cleanliness, right? So we have to identify what's the direction we want to head in, and then start charting that path. Okay. I think it's very, very important that we call a spade, and we have to know and acknowledge what is right and what is wrong. I think many people are afraid to say what's right and what's wrong. I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with someone about one of the prominent politicians of our generations, President of the United States. And we got into an interesting conversation, and I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but the question was whether or not it's important for a president to have fine midot, fine traits. And I think it's really that, I don't know about all of you, but to me, I don't think that the president is the person I would choose to be my son's second grade teacher. Right? Not because he's not a good teacher, and not because he's not a good person, but that's not who I'm looking for as an example. Now, that doesn't make him a fantastic president or a terrible president. Whatever your opinion is, you're welcome to have it. It's fine. But who do I look at as my example? I never looked at a president as my example of character. All right? Never. So to me, it's like the fact that he may or may not have good midot, good character traits, is irrelevant to him being a good or not good president. It's a different conversation. Right? But my rabbi, who I seek guidance from, who's my mentor, who I look at his every move as being like Moses, it's very important for his character traits to be sterling, to be godlike. So, but we still have to be very careful. Because I don't know if anybody, the truth is, I'll tell you why it's a little different with actors and actresses and movie stars, is because people really idolize them. People really, really do. And we're talking about a younger generation who, the music icons and the movie icons are completely consuming their essence. So we have to be very, very careful whether or not we allow that for ourselves. And to think that we will not be influenced by it. Go look at modesty in the world today. Where's modesty gone? Right? Right. So you think about modesty, right? The way people carry themselves around, the way people dress. Where does this come from? You know what it comes from? It comes from the culture all around us. It starts with the fashion. Well, it's not me being immodest. It's just this is the fashion. And then one thing leads to the next. And it's a terrible thing because people lose a self-worth. So I think the first part of cleanliness is being able to acknowledge what is right and what is wrong. What is good and what is bad. What is holy and what is unholy. And the more we're able to articulate what is and what isn't spiritual, what is and isn't good or bad, the easier it will be for us to attain cleanliness. Again, because cleanliness is one of the most important tools we're going to need to attain spirituality. All right. So we have to clean ourselves of our influences. It says, the Torah tells us, "V'haya machanecha kadosh," and your camp should be holy. That means two things. If you're able to influence other people to help them in their spirituality, great, go do it. You're obligated to go help them. You're obligated to go inspire them. But guess what? If you're not able to influence them, if you're not able to inspire them, get out. Leave.
It's bad for your soul.
So I'll tell you a story. I've said this story before, but please forgive me, all right? As I declare before you my sins today. When I was a young child at about 9 or 10 years old, about 9 years old, I was in a fight with my brother, My little brother, as most healthy siblings, you guys fight a little bit once in a while? Yeah? Okay, good. So we were having a fight, and I said something that a Jewish boy should never ever say. I don't know what the word was, but it wasn't a word that was like hello. Okay? It was not hello. It was a different word. It wasn't I love you either. Okay? It was a different word. So my mother was a little bit shocked, and my mother said, please go to your room, wait till Abba comes home, till your father comes home. So my father comes home, and instead of beating the living daylights out of me, he lovingly picked me up and sat me down on his lap on the front porch. I remember in our house in Brooklyn, and he was sitting on the front porch, and he says to me, I heard that you had a little incident with your brother, and you said something that you should never have said. I'm not upset at you for saying it. I want you to know I'm not upset at you for saying it. But I just want to know one thing. Where did you learn this word from? Where did you learn this from? So I said, right across the street, it's a schoolyard, right? And I'd play stickball with all these, African Americans, Puerto Ricans, Italians, right? And we'd all play, and some Jewish kids, Tony and Willie, and these were my friends. And I'd come home from school, and we'd go play some ball together. And this was the regular expressions they'd use, and you pick it up. My father said, okay. That was it. The next week, my parents started looking at homes in upstate New York, in Muncie, New York. Because in Muncie, New York, you don't have public schools and you don't have those influences. So if you can't manage it where you are, and there's some who don't live right across from a schoolyard, and there's some who don't interact with the people in the schoolyard. That's totally their choice. But you have to know the nature of the beast. You have to know who you're dealing with. And my parents felt it as their responsibility to put me in an environment that had better influences. David, yeah, you're uncomfortable about this.
No, I just move every day. I have to move if that was. You'd be looking for a house every day if that was the case. You were lucky to go where you were able to go to Muncie.
You're right.
And live that spiritual life that you had. Well, what about us laymen? Where do we go?
Well, we have to decide and make this very serious decision of who we're going to interact with, who's going to be our friends, where we're going to have our membership to our synagogues, to ensure that we are cultivating an environment for ourselves and for our families that are positive and that are elevating us and not pulling us down. If we're not going to be careful, if we are not going to be careful about our own spirituality, I promise you, nobody else will. Right? Only we can be responsible for our spirituality. You have a question? No. Okay, good. So that's our job. That's our job is to be spiritually sensitive to the things around us. Right? If you know that going to that coffee shop, like you mentioned earlier, is not a good place for you, so maybe find a different coffee shop. Right? Part of what we're going to learn in the process of working on Mussar is not only dealing with the issues at hand, dealing with the negative traits, but it's also not putting ourselves into a situation that will bring about those negative traits. So, for example, if you know that having that conversation with your sister-in-law is going to make you so angry and you're so irate that you're going to start yelling, kicking, and screaming, so maybe just don't have that conversation. Right? If you know that the person next to you in synagogue it makes you jealous, so maybe find another seat. Don't put yourself into a situation where you know you're going to be challenged. Our sages tell us a very important principle. In Tractate Psachim, it says the following: the women used to go together to the water, to the beach, right? Where they, women didn't have like they have today, the multiple sets of clothes. So today we have washing machines, great piece of technology. So today it's not a big deal, but it used to be the women used to go at a set time. They would all go together to the beach. They'd get undressed. They'd wash their clothes. They'd wait for it to dry. And they'd get back dressed and go back home. So the tractate in Psachim says the following. If a man was walking along the beach and realizes that there are these women and he has another way to go, he has another route, you go 1 block over and walk that way. The Talmud says that if he walked along the beach road and didn't look, didn't follow his urges, didn't follow his temptation, he didn't look, he withstood. Our sages tell us such a person is considered a sinner. But he didn't look. You know what he did do? He put himself into a place of temptation. He put him, instead of taking an alternate route, instead of going a different way, finding a way that you can stay clean, guaranteed, you put yourself into a place of temptation even though you withstood the temptation. That is what we're talking about here. How do I avoid getting into a situation of temptation? I mentioned this several times in multiple different settings. But my rabbi has declared to all of his students that any one of his students who does not have a filter on their internet shouldn't bother calling him again. Right? If you're a student and you don't, of my rabbi, right? And you don't have a filter on your internet, whether it's your phone or your computer, don't bother calling him. Why not? Why not? Because what does my rabbi teach? My rabbi teaches to have a sense for spirituality. You want to grow, to have an appreciation for holiness. If you don't protect yourself, if you don't care enough about your spirituality, then why are you bothering to call me? Right? His whole motive is to help you grow spiritually. If you don't care about your own spirituality, he doesn't have any business dealing with you. Yes?
What if you don't know if you have or not, or you don't understand very much? I hope I have the filter.
That what again?
I hope I have the filter. I don't know if I have the filter or not. Whatever.
So we have to get it.
I don't know if I have or not. Do we have? I don't understand that.
We'll talk about it after class. We'll talk about the technical details. But the idea is the principle. The principle is, do we want to be in a situation where we could fall into a trap? That's the challenge. Do we want to fall into a trap? And are we capable of falling into a trap? Yes, it's true. We can be holy and we can protect ourselves and we can watch our eyes and we can ensure that nothing bad happens and we don't do anything silly, nothing that we regret. Right? Great. It's all possible. But it's like walking on the side of the road instead of taking an alternate route. Yes.
This sounds strange. When you're trying to protect yourself from exposure to things you don't want to hear, sometimes people you remove yourself from a situation. Your friends, get offended and think you're a snob, think you're I don't know what.
You know what? That's again, we have to ask the question, what's more important?
Oh, for sure, no question.
Is my spirituality more important than those friends?
For sure.
If those friends are going to pressure you to go to a place that's very spiritually right lacking, are you going to go there also because they're your friends? No. There's going to be a point where you're going to say, you know what, enough is enough.
That's your comfort level too. You can't. It's not comfortable. So.
Right. So again, you're the gatekeeper for your environment, for your influences.
How do you explain that to them that this is not?
So there are several different ways you can do it. You don't have to hit it straight on. Tell them, you know what, this is spiritually decadent. This is wrong, and I don't want to be in an environment that's very. What? Right. So you don't have to say that. You're going to say, you know what, I have another event that came up You don't have to say, that your reasons for it. But again, it is your obligation to protect your own spirituality. All right, we're good here? Okay, so know what is good, what is pure, what is clean, what is good for your spiritual growth. And we need to, people do a cleanse. People do a physical cleanse, right? David, you ever heard of that? Ever heard of a cleanse? Yeah, so my parents did it. My parents did it a few years ago. They went on this cleanse, and there's only certain things they can drink or eat. It's like very, it's a 40-day cleanse, and it cleans out your whole system. It's really supposed to be, they feel better and they feel more energy. Guess what? We need to do a spiritual cleanse. A spiritual cleanse. We have to start the process to remove the stains and be careful about the small things, right? The small things. Mr. Madoff. Anybody heard of Mr. Bernie Madoff?
No,
Right? He stole the title of being Mr. Ponzi, right? It used to be Mr. Ponzi, who stole a few $1 million in a Ponzi scheme, so they called it Ponzi, right? If they would have known that a Madoff would have come around and knocked him off his feet and made off with all that money, right? So then they would have called it the Madoff scheme. But I don't think that he intentionally wanted to hurt so many people as he did. I think it started with a little bit of dishonesty on his taxes. It's just the government. And it's just like it starts with a little, here and a little bit there, and just a little bit here and a pinch there and a pinch there, and it's just, and after all, I'm doing so much good because look how much charity I'm giving. I'm a good steward of the stolen money, right? And it really is. And eventually, I plan to return it. We're going to make such a big deal. I'll be able to return everybody their stolen money, right? It starts from small things. Nobody ever assumes, I'm out to steal $60 billion. Anybody here think about stealing $60 billion? But you know what? 6 cents? 6 cents. It's not it's not a big deal. But then it goes to 60 cents, and then to $60, and then to $600, and then to $6,000. And God forbid it could go, further and further. So I think it's incumbent upon us to identify all of these things that are small things. A small insult, a small comment. I'd venture to say that most of the difficulties that come up in marriages are not from major issues. They're from small issues. They're small things. But when you let the small things fester and you let them grow without dealing with them as small things, they become big things. So cleanliness, we have to start with dealing with those small things and not letting them become out of hand, huge things. So cleanliness essentially means spiritual sensitivity. Being spiritually sensitive. Cleanliness requires a deeper level of work. It's difficult, right? Majority of sin is theft. Second to that is adultery. And then everyone by Lashon Hara, our tractate tells us. Tractate to Baba Basra tells us. Right? The majority in sin, fewest with adultery, and everyone with Lashon Hara.
Baba Batra?
Yeah. Page 165.
Thank you.
So it's obvious that we need to remain clear of a big sin. We all know big sins, bad, right? You think about all the, what are the big sins? You think about the Enrons, the, President Clinton, right? These types of things. Everyone says to themselves, yeah, those are terrible things. We all know that. But how do we ensure that that it doesn't happen to us? How do we ensure that those big things don't happen to us? You know how? We're careful about the small things. If we're careful about the small things, we don't get to the big things. If the small conversation that we have is honest, then the big conversations will be honest. If modesty in small areas, in areas where nobody else is around, it's we were home alone, so what? So even then we need to have modesty. Modesty isn't only when there are other people around. Modesty is between me and God. You know that the halacha tells us how to sleep at night. How to lay. You lie on your left side. There's a halacha about it. You know why? Because it's not just about, only when I'm in synagogue, that's when I'm in a relationship with God. But when I'm sleeping, I'm not. No. Wherever you are, even when you're sleeping, you're in a relationship. Is a proper conduct that's required. So we need to remove questions, we need to remove suspicions, we need to remove doubts in the small things. We know there's so much emphasis that our sages talk about with regard to people casting judgment on us. Right? Mara'it ayin. How will people see it? The observer, how will they see it? No, I don't care. I don't care what they think. I don't care what everybody else thinks. Yeah, it's a good way to live your life, not to care about what other people think. But there's another aspect of this. I'll give you an example. It says that the person who collects the charity in synagogue shouldn't be the money changer. There's a business. People change money. In the United States, it's less common. But if you go to other countries, in any European country, you'll see in every corner, you'll see money changers. Because everybody wants to get the local currency. So if you go to Ukraine, or you go to Russia, or you go to England, you go to Israel, you'll have money changers everywhere. Because, people have dollars, people want to change their dollars or the euros into shekels. Right? The new Israeli shekels. So that's what they're trying to convert their money to. So the person who collects the charity should not be the same person who's a money changer. Why? The appearance of impropriety. Very good. It's going to seem as though he's mixing up the private money with the synagogue money. Yeah, he's in one pocket's like this. He has all the bills flying all over the place. He doesn't know what's where, what's when. You know what? Our sages understood that people may see it and be very, very questioned. Remove yourself from all doubt. Remove yourself from doubt. Don't hold those two positions together. The same person shouldn't hold those two. Why? Again, we have to keep ourselves clean. For ourselves. It's not for other people. We have to do what's right, not because other people will judge us. We have to do what's right because of our own responsibility, because of our own relationship with the Almighty. So it's removing questions, it's removing suspicion, it's removing doubts in the small things, and then you don't come to the big things. So part of we know that there's. By the way, I just want to bring this to your attention that it's important for us to have a side note here to acknowledge that extremism is not a good thing. We're not talking about being an extremist. We're not talking about being a person who is going to throw stones at other people because they don't observe the way they observe. That's shameful. That's repulsive. That's not what God wants from us. Say there are two different approaches you can have to people who aren't observing like you. The first approach we mentioned, you can throw stones. The second approach, you can pray for them. You can cry for their ignorance. You can cry, ask God for them to be inspired. I guarantee you the latter is much more impactful. In Jerusalem there's a custom that people have that when they see someone driving on Shabbat, people shout, some people shout, Shabbos! Shabbos! Okay. There was a great sage that when a car would pass on Shabbos, he would say to himself, Shabbos, Shabbos. To himself. They said, what's the point of saying it to yourselves? Scream at the car, scream at the person driving on Shabbos. He says, I'm not saying it for them. They're not going to listen. He says, I'm saying it for myself, so that my Shabbos doesn't get weakened from it. So that my Shabbos stays holy. And that it doesn't become a normal thing to see the desecration of Shabbos. It's for myself. To keep myself on fire. To keep myself excited and energized about the observance of the Torah. Yes?
I feel, that a lot of times you go to the most observant synagogues and they act elitist. And instead of trying to maybe help you along, you're not like me, so you stand over there.
So is it possible? Yes, it's entirely possible.
Well,
It's entirely possible. And it's not, I'll tell you. I agree with you. There are sometimes you can go to certain synagogues. I'm not going to mention any names, obviously. But people are, I would say it's not that they're not friendly or not welcoming. It's they're not cognizant of the importance of reaching out to people who know less than they do. It's not because they're trying to be bad. It's not because they have any animosity, hatred, dislike, or otherwise anything towards that person. It's totally, people are not alert to the importance of making other people feel comfortable. They think everyone feels comfortable, especially in like you're mentioning, you've had an experience in a religious synagogue, in an observant synagogue where, because they're assuming that people who are coming there, right, and it's not a good thing, but they're assuming that everyone feels comfortable and everybody knows what's going on, right? There are synagogues that are synagogues for beginners. There are synagogues that are more adapted and tuned to it, and some are just not.
They call those outreach synagogues.
That's correct. Now, Torch does not have a synagogue, but if we would have a synagogue,
Yeah.
or like when we will have a synagogue, right, that will be the most important element, is that every person is greeted and every person is welcomed and every person is is made to feel like this is their home. Yes?
I'm going to respond to what he's saying. I live in a farm neighborhood, and I'm going to tell you, on Shabbos, I've gone for walks. On Shabbos, we walk in the neighborhood. I say good Shabbos to wherever I pass. And some people will say good Shabbos back, and some won't. And it may be someone I know, and it's that individual person. It's not me, necessarily. It's where they're at that moment. And we're all...
And I will tell you that there are times that I've said good Shabbos to people in the street, and I don't get a good Shabbos in return. It's not because, I'll tell you, it's not because they don't want to answer back for whatever reason. Most of the time, it's people with children who are busy talking to the children. They don't even hear that you're saying something to them, which, whether or not that's okay, is a totally different discussion. But most of the time, it's people who are busy with different things, or they're thinking about something they just didn't realize, and it's I don't know anybody who would intentionally see such a nice person like yourself, right, or like that they don't want to say hello, or they don't want to. I don't believe that it's possible.
Maybe they're having a bad day.
It's also possible they're having a bad day.
Maybe they're just uncomfortable for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's possible.
We have to.
It's entirely possible that that's the case. Again, our job is to judge every person favorably. Our job is to do the best we can do, so that when we're in a situation, we are in tuned properly to those around us and those who need to have that special attention and those who need to have that special welcome. I can tell you there are some fantastic synagogues, but particularly right next door. You have Rabbi Jacobian Synagogue, which is probably the most delightful, most remarkable synagogue in the country or the world. Right? It's such a warm place, such a friendly place. Right? I'd love to live in walking distance where I could just be here every Shabbos. It's an amazing place. So those of you out there, by all means, make yourselves comfortable at Rabbi Jacobian Synagogue, Congregation Torah V'Chesed. Back to cleanliness. It is important for us to have that purity and to spend time crossing the T's and dotting the I's in our character, in our spirituality. right? Not to take things for granted, not to assume that things are understood in our own life experiences. And I'll give you an example. We have this with Abraham. Abraham, our forefather, purchased the land. But you remember what happened before he purchased the land? This individual tells him, no. I'm going to give you the land for free. And he realized that his desire to really give that land was a little wishy-washy. So what does Abraham do? Abraham says, no. I want to pay for it. Not only I want to pay for it, I want to make sure that everybody around there sees me paying you for it, so that there's no questions. The problem is that what many people do is they leave question marks. There are question marks. There's all over the place. There are question marks, and the result of it is there's not a clarity. There's no clarity, and people are not sure what the conclusion is. We must have that cleanliness, and with cleanliness comes that clarity. Abraham didn't want to leave any room for doubt. Abraham didn't want to leave any room for anybody to have any misunderstanding because, it was a gift, it wasn't a gift, it was this property, that property, this land, I want to bury my wife, I'll give you even, and he gave an exorbitant amount of money. He didn't give just, the normal market value. He probably gave tenfold the market value. But that it should be clear, this is not disputed land. This is mine. And it's clear. People call you, people tell you that they'll do you a favor, right? Ask them. Ask them. You're doing me a favor, you're going out of your way. Are you expecting compensation? Oh, it's uncomfortable, I don't want to ask. Ask. It's not worth it for them to later be upset. I don't understand. Why don't they pay me? Well, I went out of my way to go help them. Just have clarity. Don't let there be confusion. Don't let there be doubt. Being extra cautious not to leave any question marks around us or our deeds. To make sure that there is no way that a person can misunderstand the intentions. Any questions here? Nothing. All right, we can just have a good time now. All right. So how do we attain this? How do we attain this trait? So the first thing we need to do is to identify what is cleanliness. We said this before. Cleanliness means knowing what's right, knowing what's wrong, and eliminating those negative things. Even if we can't do it in one day, and we're not going to be able to do it in 1 year, or probably in 1 decade. But at least we can identify what is the right and what is the wrong. All right? So number 1 is to identify. And number 2 is to start limiting your exposure to the negative, right? So if you're able to limit your exposure to, you need a pen?
I left this here.
Oh.
I was wondering where I left it.
All right. So if you can limit your exposure to your negative influences, so then what you're doing is you're already 1 step ahead of the game. It's not only that you need to clean yourself, but you also limit yourself from getting, right? It's like, imagine this, okay? Your child is getting ready to go to the wedding, and they're dressed in their nice clothes. They go outside, it's raining, and they step in the mud. Right? Right. And you're like, oh my goodness, right? So are you going to say, you know what? You're already dirty. Just stay out there. Just dance around in the mud. And just, who cares, right? You're already dirty. Who cares, right? No. See, get inside. Let's clean you off. And next time, we'll find a way to get you to the car without you stepping into the mud. right? If we realize that we're in a bad situation spiritually, why would we say, you know what? But everyone's doing it. Everyone's stepping in the mud, so I'm going to step in the mud too. No. We want to clean ourselves of it. So if whether it's bad traits, whether it's bad deeds that we're doing, bad actions, bad habits, right? The solution is not to say, well, you know what? I'm not going to be closed-minded and just clean myself off, right? Right? That's what people are saying. Oh, you're going to limit your children? You're going to limit your children from watching television?
Yes.
Right? Well, yes. Why would I put them out there in the mud and say, you know what? Continue dancing out there in the mud.
You're protecting your soul.
I'm trying to protect their soul. That's true. That's true. But again, that cleanliness is a cleanliness. Today, I think we're in a generation that needs cleanliness of the mind. Where I think that these smartphones are destroying and corrupting our minds. There is a lot of research that's being done on this, but it's not enough yet because the smartphone is really not out for more than 15 years. The iPhone is out for 10 years. But the other smartphones, I had a smartphone back in year 2000 already. It was called a Palm Pilot. Those of you who remember, right? Those are phenomenal devices. And then you had the BlackBerry, and then you had the, right? But either way,
That's how you use it. There's so much beauty of
there's no question there's great uses. The problem is we're becoming addicted to looking at screens.
It's too easily accessible.
It's having
And you're obligated to do it. In business and
100%. You're right. In many businesses,
you can't buy anything without doing it on. Sign up for a course online.
right. That's right. And you know what? It's not helping us.
YouTube
It's not
podcasts
helping
are
us.
fabulous on it.
It's
That darn Amazon.
right. Right. It's not doing us a lot of good. It really is harming us. It's harming our souls. It's harming it's harming our bodies because people aren't moving around anymore. There are illnesses now that are having to do with thumbs. Okay, because I'm serious.
Yeah, you're right.
You
Trigger
can, yeah. It's because they're going to call it a smartphone thumb or a dumb phone thumb, right? We're not moving as much as we should.
You know, Mrs. Lazarov posted something about your exposure to radiation on your phones, and you have to turn it off when you're not using it. Otherwise, you're.
Well, it's really not healthy for us.
Yeah.
It's really not healthy for us, and I would say that the greatest gift, by far, to humanity is Shabbos.
No kidding.
Shabbos is the first response ever created to the smartphone. Right? Is before there was a smartphone, God already created the response. 25 hours, you're off the grid.
Thank God.
Right? 25 hours, you're off the grid. It's off and it's done. No phone, no computers, no fax. No. Anybody have a fax here? Anybody have a fax?
What is
Okay,
a fax?
that's right. And right. No emails, no nothing. Finished. That's it. We're right. But is there a way for us to do that also during our day?
Yes.
People are spending. People are looking at their phones on average over 1,000 times a day. 1,000 times a day. Now I say that while I have my phone about 18 inches from my face.
That's a beautiful use.
Well, that's true. I believe that that's probably the greatest use of digital technology, right? And using it to inspire, hopefully, the world with Torah on Facebook and YouTube. But it's really a frightening thing. I was actually sitting in a restaurant a few days ago, and I looked over to the table next to me, and every person at the table, it wasn't one or two people, every person at the table was looking at their phone. It's a frightening thing. And I bet that it's possible that all of us are guilty of that.
100%.
Because we're all busy. You know what? We just had our conversations. Now we're just responding to everything we missed out while we were, But you know what? We shouldn't be doing that when we have a human being in front of us, an image of God sitting in front of us, and instead we're looking at a glass. It's really. I think we're getting to a point where it's becoming barrier between us and human beings. Right? People have this phone, and it's creating sort of this like a barrier between us and other people. So the intercommunication between people is being negatively affected.
It's true.
And it's having a very serious effect on our generation. Yes.
It's even where people will choose to text for 25 or 30 minutes instead of picking up the phone and making a 5-minute conversation to clear something up.
That's right.
You can't have a
Right. It's also we have this whole bullying generation that's come. It's because it's always been around, but it's much worse with smartphones because what happens is that I'm behind a screen. I would never have the audacity to say that to someone's face, but because it's on a keyboard, right, on a screen, it's not a big deal, and that's not true.
It's kind of like you don't have to own it.
Exactly, I can hide behind the screen. Yes.
It's kind of weird. You have to have it be at a certain level, a deeper level of intimacy for people to use the phone now. It's okay to text, but it's not okay to call them, which is kind of weird.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't really know them that well. I'll just text them.
Yeah.
Really? I don't know.
Why you
I don't.
why are you calling me? You don't know me. Text me.
I wonder who.
I wonder.
But
A lot of people prefer text.
Just
I mean, in the course of the day, when you're at work, it's easier, it's more polite perhaps because you're not interrupting something. They'll get it at their leisure. A
Right.
phone call
I
interrupts their-
don't know. I don't consider myself old school, and I do prefer speaking to people.
I rather talk
So-
one-on-one.
Yeah, but either way, I think it's very important for us to really take the time to evaluate what is the right and what is the wrong, what is the good, what is the bad. Right? The Torah tells us to us, behold, I place before you today the life and the good, the death and the bad. And you shall choose life. It's a very big challenge. We have these two very powerful forces in front of us. One is filled with glitz and glamour and lights and all of the fashion, etc. And one is just pure good. And it may not be that fashionable in our generation.
It's awesome.
Right? People, one of the things that to me is just most telling. Again, I'm not getting into the politics whether or not you like or dislike our government currently. But when our vice president said that he doesn't meet with women without his wife in the room, people were laughing and mocking. While they should be applauding. And by the way, these are the same people who are being accused of sexual impropriety. These are the same people who are being accused, right? So, and here's a person who's showing morality at its best. He's showing what character is at its best.
That's true.
And who's showing honesty, who's showing integrity. It's just incredible that this is what, and the world out there was mocking. Huh, can you believe this clown? Can you believe this guy? Right?
But that's what you receive when you
That
are out in the world.
we have
That's how
to be.
That's how they treat you.
We have to be careful about what we're allowing our own selves to absorb. Are these our examples? Are those people giving us their opinion our example? Is the president or vice president our example? Well, perhaps in some things yes, perhaps in some things not. But we have to be very careful about it. Know what's good, know what's bad. Stick to the good. And if something has a mixture and the mixture could be confused, run away. But at least identify. We need to identify what is good and what is not. All right, we'll stop here. Thank you all very, very much. Have a lovely evening. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Tomorrow we will have our 5 books in 5 weeks. Just a brief announcement. Wednesday night we have Partners in Torah. I look forward to seeing everyone here at Partners in Torah. If you have a partner, make sure you're here for your partner. If you don't have a partner and you want a partner, let me know. If you're not able to make it for whatever reason, come anyway. But if you really, really, really can't, at least be in touch with your study partner. And otherwise, there are some other things going on that I'm just not on the top of my head. I can't recall them. But either way, have a magnificent evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us online. Please like and share these videos so that other people can see them and hopefully enjoy them. So with that, my friends, we sign off. Thank you so much. Next week, Mussar Monday, 7:30, same place, same time. I look forward to seeing you.